think is the biggest issue affecting the queer community right now?
I mean, erasure. We're seeing it in so many different ways. I mean, I have the pleasure of like working with really great organizations. I think a lot of my work is all about building a bridge, being a world connector, especially for brands or for organizations like GLAAD, where I help them make sure that there is queer entertainment media, that we are being seen in films, television, heard across airwaves, like, and done in a way that is appropriate and also highlighting the diversity of our community. And I think right now we're seeing a rollback in that from a brand perspective. We're seeing a rollback on that from storytelling perspective. Like less and less trans characters are even um, are even in the stories we're seeing and taking in anymore. And then don't even bring into the intersectional piece of like Black, queer, and trans folks. Like we're non-existent, unfortunately. And so I feel like we're constantly seeing this tiptoeing around what is just our lives and our identity and just being able to see ourselves like representation in a real way. And that's kind of really disappointing and it's really sad because I think brands and companies and studios are all afraid of what the orange man is going to do and how he will retaliate. And now the language is changing where you're not necessarily using DEI, you're saying growth audience. Like, like you have to be smart about the ways you are trying to like Trojan horse everyone in. I mean, this is half of my work with the NFL as their first LGBTQ brand ambassador. Being able to say like, oh, this organization that, people could have very strong opinions about, but I feel like it's still important to have someone inside to be able to help get the right people in and get them highlighted in the right ways. And I think that's something that is really important for me because Black and trans queer folks already exist in the world of sports. And we have economic value and we deserve to be seen and heard and be celebrated for being in this space.
Okay, so let's talk about your work with the NFL.
Work.
Obviously, I have been around the NFL and sports my whole life. Well,
You
not
a
the
sports
NFL,
baddie.
thank you. I do my best. And the NFL, I think, has come a very long way
For sure.
in inclusion across the board. Obviously, being a woman in sports, there's a whole, and I'm positive you deal with this as well, is like this idea of what a sports fan is. And I cannot tell you how many times I've done an interview where they're like, how did you get into sports? Which I'm sure you get. Or, how did you get into football? Or, why are you so opinionated about sports? And like just questions that a straight man would never get asked.
Yeah,
It just wouldn't even make sense to ask them that.
0 aura points for bringing up straight men. Sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
for anyone in the audience.
We love our straight men in the
No.
audience. Yes. We'll talk more about straight men later. But for the sake of this conversation, do you deal with that? Because I deal with that all the time.
Well, the funny thing is, I think my superpower has been able to exist in spaces I have no business existing in, or I've been told I have no business to exist in. And that's a space like the NFL where they actually wanted me because I wasn't a fan. Like I showed up in that space, the Phoenix Super Bowl. I don't know, that was like a while ago. 2022, 2023?
2 years ago?
Yeah, and I was just moderating a conversation with some C-suite execs. CMO Tim Ellis was there, and next thing I know, I'm like making jokes, being like, "Y'all sure y'all called the wrong person to be talking about queer folks in sports?" Like I don't know, but they really appreciated my honesty, and they were like, "Hey, we're actually been trying to focus on how do we bring in more people like you? How do we bring in a community that has historically been told that you shouldn't be allowed to exist and has been this world of like toxic masculinity has kind of been put on that divide."
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, this is an interesting conversation to have because I thought they were just going to offer me a brand deal, and I was like, well, maybe, well, maybe, but no, I think for me it actually opened my brain of like, oh, okay, there's some intentionality here. They just don't know what to do and they want to authentically do it, and so how can I help them build that bridge? Because ultimately, you need someone with the cultural currency to really even like get the attention of the folks. Because NFL loves to be like, it's the NFL, it's us. Of course, everyone's gonna love us. I'd be like, girl, it don't matter.
Right, Right. Well, also, like, if you've been told you're not welcome in a space
Yeah.
enough times, you stop trying to go there.
Absolutely. And like that's the thing that I've done this work for about 2 seasons. And my first season was really about like understanding what this world was and understanding like, oh, is there a space to even really connect with like the fans that already exist? And when they announced it, the response was otherworldly. I mean, my first kind of like first family was the 49ers. Complicated history, but their fans are absolutely incredible. And then they
Mhm.
found out that the league was actually actively doing something like this. It changed everything. And so I was able to come back and understand like, oh, how can I now bring in the folks that have been historically doing this work, have been like working to bridge the gaps? How can I put them on the pedestal and make sure they meet like the NFL execs? And so everybody is like getting highlighted and amplified. And so I
Yeah.
created a game day dinner cultural series called The Exchange, and where I basically take Black and queer trans folks to their first football game. So we did it with the Commanders. There was another one that just happened during World Pride that I'm very proud of. And like so many teams are hopping on board. And it's just creating a space to really highlight the fans that were already there. And I'm so happy that I was able to have a little piece of a little bit of a legacy that's in this like NFL world. Because like, what do you mean I'm watching the NFL? What do you mean I'm watching Hard Knocks now? Like, what does that even mean? Like, why do I
Oh no,
know?
you've been sucked in.
Oh my God. That's kind of like where I have always loved culture. I can fall into anything. I mean, Last Chance You, Cheer. I mean, what's the Dallas Cowgirl cheerleading team?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think I can fall
Shout out to
into
MJ Acosta Ruiz, a judge.
yes, I can fall into this world of people like passionate, like athletes and people who are just at the top of their game and find that intersection of being like, oh, I get it. I might not need to watch a game every 5 seconds,
Mhm.
but I can find my entry point and so can other people if they're being guided in the right direction.